Truck 1, ambulance 1, medic 1, showing all units en route to
Dispatch ambulance 7, primary code 3 was on.
Well, my guest today on Going Interior Podcast, we're going to be talking about a lot of hard jobs that you've had and learning to live well through all of them. Shawn Montgomery, firefighter paramedic in the days past, also combat medic in the military.
Correct.
He's shifted gears into a career and education and communications.
Interesting jump from all of that to this, but no, it's been an interesting life.
Awesome. Well, we worked together at the fire department when I first started out here. Take me back to what got you into this medicine and then fire department way back. Where did that start out for you?
So, it started back in 99, actually, in L.A., Hollywood. I had a wonderful mom who came to me and said, you're not doing enough. So no more bouncing and, roughing about down there on the strip. It's time for you to, figure something else out. So she came to me with 3 pamphlets. And one of them was an EMT pamphlet for Daniel Freeman, UCLA.
Okay.
EMT program. And that's where it started. I said, okay, I'll jump on this path. And at first I thought I was just going to kind of keep her, get her off my case for a little bit. And then day one, I was like, oh, this is my jam. This is something that I really felt I just had an affinity to. I just understood. And again, not at like a doctor level or a physiology level, but more of a just process level, like how systems kind of work from a 30,000 foot view. And then we started getting into some of the trauma stuff, and it just really, stuck with me. And so, I did that, and then I graduated high in the class, which was the first time I had done anything well in school. School wasn't really for me. I came later, on in life. But, I graduated in the top part, and if you did, AMR was one of their sponsors, and so American Medical Response. I went on to AMR and had a shorter career at AMR and a few other ambulance companies.
And you were doing that in LA?
In LA, yeah. So
some
LA,
interesting calls there.
Hollywood, Compton, Long Beach were like my areas, and then the Valley, San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just basic transport, but then later on, you kind of got picked up by some of the paramedics who were running calls with LA County. The time frame, I don't have the best memory, but it was LA County and LA City we were partnering with. I think City actually had their own ambulances, and County we would partner with. We were their buses. But so once you got in with some of the paramedics and they were working 24s, that's when you got to wear the jumpsuit.
Oh yeah.
That's all I wanted.
Jumpsuit?
That's it. I didn't care about anything else.
He actually has a jumpsuit on right now.
It's under, right? Yeah, I'm ready to go, by the way, if the tones go off, I don't know what I do anymore, but anyway, make sure where the media goes.
Right.
But, so I did that for a while, and then just kind of hit a dead end, and it was just really, again, it was just I wanted more. Now that I felt like I, graduated a school and felt like I could do more, and then I said, I'm going to join the military. I was actually sitting in LA traffic one day, and I was like, I'm so over this traffic. I got to get out of here, And I didn't really have any family members who did that. I didn't really. I mean, my grandfather was in the Navy, but I didn't know that until way later on. Military wasn't talked about a whole lot, but it was one of those things where I just had a calling to it. I think I watched Stripes one day and saw John Candy, because at the time, I was about 350. I was a big hoss. So I called up a recruiter, and he came to the house and chuckled and said, "Yeah, that's you got a lot of work to do if you want to join the service." And I was up for the challenge, So I dropped everything I was doing and lost the weight, and then I was like, I want to be a combat medic. I was already a medic, I was already an EMT, so I already had that job locked in if I was able to qualify physically. So that happened, went into 1st Infantry Division, 126 Infantry. I was went to medical training, actually EMT school in Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio.
Okay.
And the cool part was, I was already a nationally registered, EMT.
Sure.
So class was
Breeze.
a breeze.
Nice.
But then we started getting into some paramedic stuff because, in the service, you're pushing meds, you're doing crikes, you're getting into it, you're getting dirty. So that was fun. But then I just didn't have to study a lot because I knew it all already.
Sure.
So it's, I got to really partake in Fort Sam Houston and the city of San Antonio's festivities. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
The river walk down there and all of that. So we had a lot of fun. Had met and just some great guys and girls. We had, on the medical side, we had a lot of females as well. So that was the first integration from coming from basic training at Fort Benning. Mm-hmm. I think they call it something different now, but at Fort Benning in Georgia, it was all dudes, just doing dude stuff,
Sure.
and then you get actually reintegrated into normal life and all of that. So that was cool. And then, I went over to Germany. That was one of the things I signed up for. They said, "You want to go to Germany?" I said, "Sure."
So you got to get out of L.A.
I was out of L.A., and I loved it. I loved Germany. I loved the military. I didn't think I was going to go to Iraq, but I did,
Sure.
But I tell you, it's just an amazing opportunity for young people, to go serve their country, but to get out and go see what type of opportunities are out there, especially if for me, I grew up in LA. That's all I knew. To me, it was a small town. To everybody else, it was like, oh, Hollywood, LA. I was like, it's just 3 miles this way or 5 miles that. It wasn't, it wasn't the whole big thing that a lot of people make it to be. And then I went out into the real world for a while, and I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And I met my wife, and she had a family business here in town, and it was like, well, when we got out, it was, do you want to go back to LA or you want to go to Grand Junction? And that was a no-brainer. I was like, we're going to Junction. So I did 4 years in the military, but then I actually got stop-lossed my last year. And I had an actual 8-year contract. 4 of them were active and 4 were inactive, which means I become a civilian. But if something ramps up or they need me to come back within those 4 years, and they needed me to come back before my 4 years was up.
Where were you?
I was in Samara, Iraq. Okay. It's interesting. I actually, 2 weeks ago, I literally just got to spend time down in San Antonio with my platoon sergeant, who I credit him for saving my life. I think he understood the situation that I was in, having to be, being stop-lost. I had already, we were packing up our stuff to go home, come back from Germany, overseas, back here to Grand Junction and start a life here. We had just had a baby, and I had a big surgery, and so I was still recovering from that. And then here you are, throwing on 100 pounds of gear and trying not to get shot.
And they just tell you, boom, you're coming back.
Yeah, you're going back. You're not leaving.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was rough.
Yeah.
Mentally, it was hard because, and you'll see this in this service and anything else where you have to ramp it up. I mean, I had to turn the soldier stuff off. And the thing was, I was a sergeant. I oversaw some very high level, stud soldiers. We were combat medics, but we were hard charging. We were infantry. I mean, we were ready to go at all times, and we had the ego, and we had and we had to. It was a lot of testosterone flow,
Sure.
but it was necessary to meet the mission, and I turned it off before I left. So before I knew I was going, I was like, I'm out of here, So I actually need to crank this back.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do well as a civilian,
Sure.
I was just a little bit hot, always, and so that was hard though to turn it back on.
Sure.
And that was one of the biggest things that affected me, was having to turn it back on. Now I have, before it was just my wife and I, and don't get me wrong, that was a lot. I would have been a lot to lose. She was, I've known her since I was 13. She's my best friend in the whole wide world.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So, sorry. But she, tons of support there, and to turn it back on. And now I had a kid to lose, and this whole big life in Grand Junction, and it was really hard. And I don't think I was ever really able to do it, and if it wasn't for the support of my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Marcatante. I think he recognized that. He brought me in, to where he was, which was, nowhere was safe, but it was relatively safer than living in a Connex box. It was in a solid building, a cinder block building on some grain farm in the middle of Iraq. And he gave me time to acclimate several months. And then he had to send me out to do some things that, the mission needed. But by that time, I was turned back on. I was healed up from my surgery. I had gotten some good PT. He was my lifting partner. We did some big, we were just talking about some big powerlifting competitions and stuff like that. It was super cool. So anyway,
Did he know you before, like when you were in the military before you got stop loss? Did he know the previous you? What do you think that, like for you, putting yourself back in that hard charging time, like what did that look like? What kind of missions were you guys doing, and what mindset did it take to meet those missions?
Ooh. Well,
do we want to go there? Can we go there?
No, we could definitely go there. I mean, I think you have to remember, especially in some of these jobs in the military, and the military catches a lot of flack right now, and all that aside, the 1% that sign up, to volunteer to serve their country, there are several missions within, without getting from a global perspective. If you micro it down to what the infantry is, they are the people that don't take no for an answer. They do not stop when someone says to stop. They do not slow down with a flat tire. They do not stop. They are a dog on a bone. And that's literally the mentality of that. So all of our training was focused around that as well. So when we were training in Germany, and we'd be gone for 3 months and just out there doing, revolutions of battlefield, things, I guess you could. We were just doing all kinds of different training, and then we realized we were going into an urban environment, which was way different than like when I first came on. We were literally out in the middle of the fields, frolicking in tanks, beautiful rolling German hills, and and you'd come by and you'd see a Fraulein with a beer, It was, I'm obviously exaggerating, but it was so cool. And then it was urban warfare. So all the smiles are away. You're in close-to-close contact. Everything you see right now, you're seeing. We literally had to go in, and we had less than 1 second to decide enemy or combatant, and they looked exactly alike, and they were in the same house, part of the same family sometimes. It was absolutely ridiculous. I've had to really do some work and talk to some people to remind me about some of the things that we did, because I don't remember. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's trauma and PTSD," and of course it is, but I still want to know. I got a Facebook message from an old buddy who was like, "Remember that time we were on patrol and we almost stepped on that IED?" I was like, "What? No. That wasn't me." He's like, "Doc, it was you." I'm like, "That was different. You sure it wasn't this guy or this guy?" Because some of us looked similar. He's like, "No, that was you, Montgomery." I was like, "No, I don't remember that at all." And then we had a guy we were going through before we were getting ready to do this big mission down in Samara. And you have to remember too, Samara, you've heard about, you heard about Baghdad and the Green Zone. You also heard of Fallujah, and some of the other names are escaping me now. But Ramadi. Yep. So Samara was, we called it the Wild West. So did Saddam. It was a place that he was like, I'm not even going to mess with those guys. Like, I'm gonna worry about ruling over everybody else. Yeah. But
they do what they want.
Yeah, they can do it. But Samara, they can do whatever they want. So it was pretty wild down there. But we were clearing houses, and then I was down. Actually, I didn't always go in because I was the medic, right?
Sure.
Plus, regardless, at that time I was about 220. I had thinned down to 220, but I was still a big dude, So, and those houses were small, and those hallways were small, and you've got everybody in gear, and so I was
You're
like
300 and all your stuff probably.
Easy. I had a full pack, right?
Yeah.
So, so I was outside, and the team was clearing the house, and we had done this a lot. So, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like, this is no big deal, but I was definitely like, I wasn't ramped like I had been when we had mortar rounds and rockets and live fire coming. I'm way different, But I get this harrowing scream, "Doc!" I'm like, oh God, I didn't hear a gunshot. I didn't hear anything, right? So I'm like, what's going on? So I come lumbering up these narrow stairs, because the houses are built straight up, And I get to the rooftop, And I'm like, what? And I see this guy, and he's just shaking, but I can't see what it really is. It's just like this cloud of this shaking thing. And I saw a chain attached around the waist. And this guy's just shaking. And the chain was up against a cinder block. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what is? And he's like, they're like, Doc. I'm just here, it's a very like muffled, and I don't understand what's going on. I'm trying to process. And it's a mentally disabled person. And they are covered in, number 2, and flies. Just absolutely covered in sores and flies. And he's chained to the roof. Samara, there wasn't a mental health clinic, right?
Sure.
And I look over, and there's this little covering that was a cinder block covering up top, and there was another person up top, another disabled female, underneath a tarp covered in number 2 as well.
Whoa.
I lost it. And I went up and took my rifle, and I busted open the cinder block. It was just one of those, like, the kind of decorative ones with the flower looking type of block. And I just popped it open, and the problem, I popped it open. He got up and ran straight towards me, and I was like, oh no. I was super emotional, though. I know. I was like, you're not chaining people to the, like, I was just over it, and it was, so anyway, I got in a little bit of trouble for that, because he had ran down and went and hid in a closet, and, I didn't understand it.
That's really interesting, because I got to think in the military, you're choosing sides, clearly. You have to say,
you want to come home, you do, yeah.
We are against this side. It's us versus them.
Yeah.
And you're, villainizing, and then you see, so you're already thinking, these have killed some of my buddies. They're doing bad stuff to bring me over here in the first place. And now I'm seeing this. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
Well,
like,
you're
I'm
doing
seeing
a good job.
this, and you're like,
just what a culture shock. Just a shock. Not only to include the injuries that are sustained in military injuries, bullets and fragments and bombs, and
you're seeing your buddies.
Yeah.
And
the sad part was I buried 3 of them before I actually came over, and that's what really messed me up too. I was just like, I'm not even supposed to be here, and you can say anybody can say whatever they want about, you got a duty to serve and you signed that contract. Yeah, you're right, I did, and I went over there and I did it, but I didn't like it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I did not thrive in that environment.
So you came home and you moved to Grand Junction, right? That had to be a hard transition just coming home.
Well, I didn't think it was going to be, but boy, was it. Yeah. Yeah, it was.
You're keyed up. That's I can't imagine coming from, urban warfare to sitting on your back porch, and I'm going to have a cocktail and hang out, and everything's perfectly, safe and happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's that ringing in your ears constantly? And what's that horrible nightmare, and all the other things that you just and tip of the cap to the military. They are doing better things, like you guys too. Mental health is important, and I know we'll get there, but they're doing a way better job than they're doing back when I got out. What did
it look like to leave at that point?
Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't told to take care of my medical records, or these are the things that I need to go to the VA for and get services. I was not prepped for anything. The other thing too, and I will make a global apology. I don't remember. I got stop lost. So I was like, is the minute they were like, okay, you can leave, I'm like, I'm gone. Like, it was like, I still have 3 years or whatever, 2 years left on this contract. I'm like, I'm out. So it was okay. Yeah, sure. And then I'm like, I got to get out of here. So
you were ready.
I rushed out.
You were really ready.
Now there is, but now there wasn't much out processing. I'm sure they checked a box on something, but it wasn't what I needed. But yeah, coming back here, it was, here I am, 28, and combat, and I was going to go work for the old family business, shout out, plug to the Brickyard, right? Yep. Shout out
Sponsored by.
Yeah, no, my wonderful family, my wife's family, they've been running the Brickyard a long time in this town, and that's what we came to do, we realized very quickly I wasn't really good in sales. I wasn't much of a sales guy. I didn't know, I didn't even know what to call the block still. 20-something years later, the guy on the roof, I still don't even know what that block's called.
Right.
It's just something, flowery block thing. I don't know. So
your in-laws are like, oh, my God,
I know right now my
teach this
wife's
guy
just
anything.
like, oh, Shawn, you are a hot mess. But anyway, that's, obvious. So, but yeah, I just wasn't, my father-in-law was, I got this new son-in-law and he doesn't know anything.
Right.
And, I had all these ideas but I didn't know anything. I was just more of a, thinker-upper, instead of a getter-doner, And so I was like, I'm going to go to college and use my GI Bill. So I went to Mesa State at the time before it was switched over to CMU. And boy, was that was the biggest culture shock. So here I am, first of all, in some of the classes, and I just did not understand. And then I am 28, and I'm sitting with all these 18-year-olds, and they're picking their nose and doing their thing, and I'm like, you guys have no idea. You have no idea what's going on in this world. And that what messed me up is, and it still does. Don't get me wrong. I found places to put it, and I pull it out and mess with it sometimes and put it back. But what really is that I'm sitting on my porch having a cocktail in my wonderful United States in Grand Junction, Colorado, right? And in this beautiful town we live in, and we're lucky to live in this town.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm thinking 3,000 miles that way, something, I know what's going on over there, and here I am not doing anything about it anymore. And not that I could do anything, honestly, back then, but I felt like I could. So anyway, here I am looking at 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids, and I was like, nope, this is not for me. And I got into a really dark spot, drinking a lot, acting out a lot. Thank goodness I had the gym. At that time, I was just lifting, right? So I would just go in and just put on, music that blasted my ears, because I couldn't hear anyway. Because you have to remember that's the other thing we didn't talk about, but where I sat, we rolled in 113, in Humvees. Armored Humvees. Well, when I got there, they weren't necessarily armored. Armor was like a sandbag on the floor, so hopefully the IED doesn't blast through your feet, which they did a lot, and you see a lot of soldiers. But before the armor actually got there, we were rolling in soft vehicles. So it was the driver and the captain or the sergeant, whoever the leader was, and then it was the medic, and then a gunner. Well, and then you had your 50 cal gunner that stood right here with a big 50 cal.
Right next to you.
Well, and where do those shells go? Right onto, especially back then we had these little curlers up on our flak vest. So sometimes that sucker would get.
Oh my goodness.
It was brutal. But anyway, you had that 50 cal, and they tried to get you to wear a earplug or stuff, but it wasn't like as soon as they start ripping, you're like, oh, hey, time out, I gotta put my earplug in. It wasn't happening. But that was, ringing in, I just turned the music up, and then I would just lift, and that adrenaline dump for that amount of time would kind of suffice. And then my wife really, again, we could have a whole podcast just on her. She's so incredible, but she recognized pretty early that I was not thriving and I wasn't in a good spot, and she's like, you were always good in medicine. Why don't you go to paramedic school? Because that's the one thing that's also a misconception. Like when you get out of the military, you only have your EMT. You only have your National Registry EMT. You don't have your paramedic. So I was like, I have to go to paramedic school, and I was like, I'm like school, And I was like, okay, I'm here for that. Let's do that. So she actually found a brand new school up at Colorado Mountain College.
Oh yeah,
alma mater.
Alma mater.
What's up?
Buddy.
Yeah. I was number 2. You were
one.
You were the first one.
Yeah. 2005.
2006.
Yeah.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Yeah. Shout out to Liz Owens.
Yeah.
Right? That woman, she was incredible. Anyway, but so went up there several times a week, and I was driving back and forth. Yep. So it was great. I did that for 6 months.
Wow.
And at that time, that's when a couple buddies of mine, back before 2006, Grand Junction Fire had AMR as their primary transport vehicle. And then they took on the ambulance services. So there was this big post out to all the medical, that, hey, the Grand Junction's going to be hiring, 16 people. And I was like, on the fire department? because I came from EMS. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we ran with fire all the time,
Sure.
but I wasn't a firefighter.
Right.
I was an EMT. I was a medic.
Right. Right.
And and then they're like, well, no, you mean. I'm like, cool. I'll just be on the ambulance. Like, no. You don't understand. You have to go. You're gonna be a firefighter and a paramedic. And I'm like, firefighter and a I just want the paramedic part. The firefighter part, and I know all the guys and
Everybody's
and
thinking,
everyone's
what
are you doing, Monty? Well, for me, it's hot in there, as you know, and you're wearing all those clothes, and it's small and it's dark. You can't see. Yeah. They don't realize that wasn't my jam. Like, I want to be on the medical side. So anyway, once I realized that I had to be because I didn't grow up wanting to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. I wouldn't.
Well, it's funny to hear from this guy who's just done all this gnarly stuff in the Middle East, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be,
I just was,
you're pretty
I was
used
like,
to being uncomfortable.
I was, but I wasn't like,
not that kind.
I didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, I don't want, I've worn heavy gear. I've been in tight spots. I've been, I've done a lot of this stuff. But yeah, so I did it again, I got through the process and hired on in 2006. There was no downtime. It was the hustle. Yeah. It was anything from obviously running all kinds of calls, and depending what station you were at, you had to know your specialty, whether it was hazmat or river, high angle. We're going on the boat. All that stuff. Staging for SWAT. All the fun stuff. All the stuff that I think a lot of that people are romanticized about the job, especially wanting to come in and do it, which, come on, come. We need you, but a lot of calls, a lot of EMS calls, obviously. I mean, I think it was at the time, it was 85% of our calls were EMS, river calls. I remember, pulling people out, got stuck in a strainer, and they're down, and here you are, not only trying to get them into the boat, but now you're also trying to pump on a chest with a river boat that's going 30 miles an hour, trying to get to an ambulance to get to a hospital. Yeah, and it's go. Yeah, like it's not. That was one thing that I tip of the cap to this department and to my previous training and in military. It was I was trained at a very high level to perform these types of tasks. When people needed me or my team to show up, we were ready. For all of the second guessing and all the things that maybe you're fake it till you make it, or some of the things that you may have some vulnerability in between the two ears here. On the ground, when things really hit, we were highly trained, and we did a good job. We really did. I mean, I worked with some studs, and I'm talking about men and women. I mean,
and those kind of calls. I mean, you cannot mess around. There's no time
hesitation.
for equivocating.
There's no hesitation. When you get a Phoenix Award or something like that.
For cardiac arrest.
Cardiac. Yeah. So the cardiac arrest person, you save the person's life, and they come out with zero to little deficit. Yeah. Right. I mean, even though and you're a part of a whole team that does it, and not just you, Right. The ones that affected me the most were the people that were obviously kids. And I think I told you this a little bit earlier, but I had one or two really tough kiddo calls. And, those affect you they affect you. If you're human and have a pulse, they affect you. And those hurt, those ones hurt. One was a car accident out on the highway, and God bless Gus Hendricks. I'll tell you right now, at the time he was my captain. He saw me walking over to handle this patient, and he kept me away from it. I think he maybe he sensed it or realized that the kiddo calls were really hard on me, but yeah, he was like, I got this one, because he's all paramedic as well. Also, yeah. So it was. First of all, he outranked me. I was like, cool.
Okay, yes, sir.
But then it was like, I knew what he was. I could see in his eyes that he was protecting me. Yeah. I don't think you ever know that. So if you ever watch this, shout out to Gus Hendricks. I love that man. And then the people who took their own lives. Those were the ones that were. There's two. Man, I can't get rid of those. They were. They were just really, of course, those are eerie and sometimes gross. Like all the things, but. You look at them and you're like, how am I any different than that person? Like, what is going on in that person's life that I'm no better than this person? Like, I've been there. I've thought about this stuff. Like, how do I can't get rid of some of these demons I carry with me. I don't have the resource. How do I, I'm barely hanging on here. I mean, I'm faking it. I'm like, yay, this is great. But inside I'm like 3,000 mile away. This is going on. I've seen all this stuff, I'm, dealing with all these things. Like, how I'm not that different. And you think about it, people ask you, do you think about that? And you're like, oh no, because back in those days, you don't talk about that stuff. You can't show weakness like that. Right. And nowadays, I'm like, no, I thought about what the world would be like without Montgomery in it, So those were the ones that really messed me up.
Yeah. And I'm talking to our counselor, like that's not rare at all.
Right.
To like sometime in your life have this period that you contemplate suicide or contemplate dying. That is not rare. And unfortunately in our field it's a higher prevalence even than, and I don't know the stats for the military, but for us, it's almost 50% higher than the normal, workaday world.
Yeah,
that
I think military and all those are right up there at the same.
So it's something that's really, I don't know. Yeah, people obviously don't want to talk about it. There's some like shame or scared to let that out. But I think it's worth saying that's a, it's a real thing. We need our folks around us,
and you hope that. You say these types of things that and people listen to you. But also, I don't wear that anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason. I miss it.
Yeah.
Some of it. I don't miss some. I don't miss those inspections. I don't miss getting called out right when I'm getting ready to take, especially some of the cooks we have are just incredible, right?
You're about to get dinner after a long day.
Yeah. We had some cooks and you get ready to eat and you're like, well, I'm not going to see that for another 2 hours or ever, eat something at the hospital.
But tell me about you had been a medic in the military, a medic at the fire department, and you had, helped many people, throughout the course of that work too. And you had discussed with me that you felt like your time had come where you had to be kind of done with it.
I ran out of touches, I say. Yeah. I ran out of touches. And I don't know where this came to me. I have this theory that every time you touch somebody in a traumatic event, that you leave a piece of yourself with them and you take a piece with you. And I ran out of touches. That was like my bucket was full. Full. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was because we didn't have the support, and not support from leadership. We didn't have enough stations. We didn't have enough paramedics. We didn't have enough ambulances. We didn't have enough. Mm-hmm. And this town was exploding, and they did not have enough.
Yeah.
And I ran out of touches. Like my tank was full. I just realized that I could not do it anymore. And the sad part is I was running a call on a beautiful, I think early 90s woman, and she was, she had a do not resuscitate order, and she was on her journey to go meet her maker, and a lot of times, us as, we're very compassionate, those calls count, even though you can't do anything. My role is to, help you along your way. And I did that all the time. And the last call, when the one call when I knew it was over was I had that call. And I didn't do anything. I was pissed. It was 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, shift change at 8. Mm-hmm. I had a busy day ahead of me, and I was frustrated. We ran all night. It was a 17 plus call. And again, there's only 24 hours in our 24-hour shifts, and I was done. And my biggest worry was getting the report done so I could get out of here and go about the rest of my day, and not this beautiful 90-year-old lady
that's dying. Yeah.
What a jerk. So again, you carry again, and I've made peace with all of that, but you take those things on, and I just was not going to be one of those guys that was retired in place. And bless your heart if that's you are. Even your 50% is better than a lot of people's 100%. So I love you. I'm not talking bad about you, but
Wouldn't
you know who
hurt
you
that.
are.
Yeah.
You know who you are, and it's time to, and if you look at everyone that's ever left the fire service with the skills they've had, every single one of them, if you've looked at all of our guys who've left on good or other terms, I mean, they've all been successful. There's a life after this for people that lose their touch, they're out of touches,
Yeah.
And not to take people away from this service, but again, I gave everything I had, and then I realized I couldn't do it anymore, and then I realized I couldn't live with myself. I still have regrets over that. I didn't hold her hand on her way out, even though technically I didn't have to do anything.
Sure.
Technically, I was good. I'd write a report, go home. But that's not how we roll. That's not how we were trained. It's not how you train people in the academy, right? So, again, there's a lot of circumstances for that. And then what I realized after that is I needed to do something different. Yeah. But I still wanted to be a part of the fire service.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you do?
Yeah, right. So
what'd you do?
What do you say you do around here? Well, at that time, we were just transitioning from. We were, and Grand Junction Fire was, we had a Facebook page or something.
Yeah.
We had a couple things, but really, we had an awesome freaking rock star PIO, Mike Page, for I don't know, 700 years.
Yeah,
right?
right.
Page is around. Page is still around, right? Shout out to Mike Page, right? That guy, man. I learned a lot from him, but because I would watch him a lot, but he was old school. I mean, internet and all this social media and all this, and he was getting ready to retire. And I actually really paid attention to that window, that opening, and I was like, okay. And so I went to the chief and Chief Watkins, and I put a booklet together. And said, this is how I want to change the PIO role, or this is how I want to bring it up, evolve it. Yeah, bring it up to the times. And it was just ready for that, And like I said, and Paige was just getting ready to retire. And so I pitched myself to the chief, and shout out to Chief too, by the way, because at first he was like, mm-mm. And then I think he got a little bit of a nudge from the city a little bit that was just like, hey, give the kid a shot, and he was like, okay. And thankfully, bless his heart, he did, because I think that we built a wonderful relationship afterwards. It's hard. When you're online, you don't have a lot of personal relationship with the chief. They don't know you that well. Yeah. I wasn't necessarily one of the guys that was around the office all the time. And hopefully he's thankful for it. I think he is.
Set us on a great trajectory.
I mean, again, I miss this team. I mean, this team you guys have now is incredible, and I've been a fan since I left.
This quote I thought of you too. You those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly. That was John F. Kennedy.
Well, Kennedy's on point.
Because you took some risks, and you rebranded, reworked your life in a lot of ways.
I've got a really good support system.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
The other component I was going to mention, you were talking about the sleep from when you were doing the job. I mean, has all that become easier to deal with at this point, now that you're working a 9 to 5 and you have the support? Sleep is still, it sticks with you.
It's actually so relevant right now. I'm going through some crazy sleep stuff, and I don't sleep. I sleep for about 4 hours. I sleep hard from when I close my eyes to about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm done.
Yeah. And how do you perform? How do you function after little sleep? And we have so many sleep interruptions. It's it's pretty detrimental to our health.
You should have seen.
I teach a class in the academy now.
Oh, you do?
These 18 to 24-year-olds are probably like, whatever, dude, I'll be fine. But 6 years in, they're probably like, what was on that? What was on that PowerPoint? What was he talking about? There's a thing there.
And I tell you, that's the other thing that I wanted to bring up too about this. Your activities. Mm-hmm. You get to a point where hey, I've got 48.96. I got 4 days off all the time. And then mix in a trade or some PTO, and I'm off for a couple of weeks. I could have another job. I could do all these other things. And great, listen, there is a part of that that is very relevant. I know that there's people who are very successful outside of the fire department on their side hustles.
Right.
But I'll tell you right now, just pay attention to if that's a distraction from what you're doing. If you really need to pay attention to, is this a distraction to keep me away from addressing the issues I need to address in my life now at a younger age versus just go, and then run out of steam at 50. I'm almost 50, but you just run out of steam, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, but I can't do anything else, and now I'm retired in place, and now you become a liability to your team members. And before, when you're hot and heavy, you're an asset, and you need to. And I tell you, for all you guys out there, I mean, you need to maintain yourself as an asset at all times in this job, because the minute you're not, you need to go do something. You have to go do something else. Like that's my huge pitch is, and I tell them all the time when they come over. I still have lots of buddies here. Yeah. And it's I tell them all the time if we're sitting around drinking a beer, man, are you good? Don't remember, everyone that has left has been successful. Don't think that. I know you got to stick around for that retirement, but I guess if you come to my house on a B or C day game, and you're not on your A game, we got problems. We got big problems. You know what I mean? I need you on your A game at all times. So, and I think that's fair as taxpayers and our community members and the people that we serve.
It's a hard job. And if you're on your B or your C game, I think those little things can start to whittle at you too, and make it harder than it needs to be. If you're looking at all the hard things all the time and not feeling it, it's going to get real hard real quick. Yeah. At 3 a.m, things get hard for anybody. But
hopefully we got leaders like yourself who, not only paying attention to the crazy important job you have as a captain running crews, taking people into burning buildings who have families and lives, and they're not just a number. You know what I mean? You're taking people into go save people. You're using people to save other people. And as a leader, and I know you do a heck of a job. And the fact that you're just running something like this is so important. But I think you guys need to hear that your job is also to pay attention to your people, to your soldiers, right? Yeah. They're first, right? They're the first. Absolutely. They're the first one. I mean, you got your family and all that, but when you put that on, like and I think that you guys do a really good job now of reading your people. Your people. It's not just clock in, clock out. Their families. You have dinner with them. Maybe you hang out, or their strengths and their weaknesses. Yeah. And I think that's so important as leaders of the fire service all over the country that you got to know your people. Yeah.
We take care of them, and then they can take care of the people.
That's right.
The people, the customers, the clients.
Yep. It's huge.
Yeah. I had one other quote that I thought of you. I was going to use it in the last one, and I forgot it. Oh. And then, so you mentioned this, but satisfaction. So this is Arthur Brooks is just a professor at Harvard. You might know a thing or two.
Yeah, just a couple things about that.
Satisfaction comes not from chasing bigger and bigger things, but paying attention to smaller and smaller things.
Yeah.
So
that one kind of hits home. Very relevant right now too, but
I think with you talking about just, us running around and chasing these things and at the end of the day, like coming back to making sure we're good, our people are good, our families are good, and we can do the next thing, whatever that is,
right. No, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I think that, that community that you build, it's also nice to have that community when you are somewhere for 48 hours now. Mm-hmm. That's 2 whole days you're away from your family, and it's, and if you all don't like each other, or if you all don't figure each other out, it's a long 48 hours. I mean, I used to do it when it was 24, and it was a long 24 hours,
Yeah. When you're up all night,
you're up all night as well. I mean, you gotta at least respect the person that's next to you, and if you don't, a lot of times it's probably because you don't know them.
Yeah.
So take the time to get to know them. Take the time to spend some time with them, and have those difficult conversations. I know you guys have started this pathway of really paying attention to mental health and bringing on me and others and talking about some of those things. And I think it's so important to also, on a micro level, have those at your stations too, have those in micro groups where maybe it's just you and 2 others. But, the one-on-ones are they almost feel like, especially from a captain perspective, they almost feel like, they're evaluations or, but from a 2-on-1 to a 3-on-1 or a crew on, with you. Those, then humanize yourself. That's the other thing. And I know you do this, but, you're a captain and all of that stuff, but you're also my neighbor, right? You're also the guy that I like to drink beer with sometimes, You're also a mentor, but you're also a peer, So sometimes it's really cool to see leaders step in and be a little bit vulnerable, and show some of that.
We've had some challenges.
And if you're not willing to do that, then you probably got some mental health issues. And so you need to talk to somebody, you know what I mean? Because you're not helping, right? Like, especially nowadays, everybody's so open and, we're talking about all this stuff. It's important that we see some vulnerability in our leaders so we can feel like we can be vulnerable when we become leaders. Yeah, it's important.
For sure.
Yeah.
Our therapist, Jamie Lloyd, talks about how some of that healing from trauma stuff can happen just on the tailboard, the 10-minute or the drive back from the hospital where you're just like, man, that was messed up. That hit me. Yeah. And so it doesn't all need to be, this clinical setting or, sitting down for an hour. But can happen when we're like you're saying, creating this dynamic in this environment where people can, share with each other.
One of the things I thought about as you guys have been, like I said, I'm just really impressed with a lot of things that's been happening at the fire department since I left. But also preparing families, I know we talk about the service provider all the time, but
it's all good, buddy. It's all good. Yeah, them knowing what's about to happen, and I think we had a class a little while ago where they started to get a look into, so some of it could make a little more sense. Like, why is this person coming home and not being, who they want to be? Yeah.
Yeah, I did not expect this, so I apologize. But it's important, I think, as you progress in this mission, that you look at the family members as well and provide resources. Maybe Jamie Lloyd, maybe she's got some ability to put on classes, or the fire department has such an awesome family. I honestly miss that the most. I mean, I'm blessed that I still make it on the union retiree email, so I know when I can come have a free snack and a beer, whatever, which I love that, by the way. I love it. Even though I don't show up because I'm doing all this stuff. I will show up soon, one day.
Someday.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that, you've got an amazing group of family, and they're connected on Facebook groups and other ways, and they're super tight. I think that providing some resources to them would be really big because, again, I'm not going to go home and talk about this horrible thing and expose my family to it. Right. And if they're not prepared, I'm just going to shove it. I'm going to drink a beer, I'm going to do something else, or whatever I'm going to do, however I'm going to cope with it. Hopefully now it's talking to somebody. But again, but I think that families want to be that sometimes, and I know that we gauge that as providers, that it's almost like an ego, like you don't need, I'm dealing with this, you don't need to deal with this, right? Like this, I'm not exposing you to this. But I think that there should be some of that, so your families know, and then your significant others are able. So they can be, not like, I have my meeting with Jamie next Tuesday, and I'm just going to suffer in silence till then.
Yeah, I feel super lucky. My wife works in the ICU, so we do have those conversations. But I know for a lot of people, it's like a separate life. You're going away, and that can be whatever. If you're leading a double life from your family, no matter what it is,
right?
It's not good.
Yeah, Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
But if we're not prepared for it, and then the family's not prepared for it, they don't know what's going on. They don't know why we're, not the fun, jokey dad that they're expecting when we get home. Yeah. But we can't share why. That's hard.
Well, and that's the one thing that is really interesting that you say that, because that's the one thing that has ticked all the way down for me, and I'm slowly ticking back up even after all these years. Is, man, I was, especially before Iraq, like just full of it all the time, like just a good time all the time. 10, if you're around, I have the energy, I'm making the time, we're going to have a good time. Yeah. And then as I got out of Iraq, and then again a few years into fire service and running those difficult calls and doing all that, just slowly ticking down. And my wife had recognized that stuff, but at the time I'm like, I'm all right, and But you start ticking down, it'd be nice to catch that before you at a 4 or 5 instead of a 1 or 0.
Yeah.
You know, because coming back up from 0 and 1 is really hard.
Yep.
And I think also that's where the families could help out too. You know, some of the, queue up some of these partners, these significant others with some abilities to maybe ask certain questions or just be certain something for the service provider sometimes, you know, because it's a lot. I know a lot of guys and gals on the fire department, they're everything all the time. Mm-hmm. They're everything on when they clock in,
right?
But they're also everything when they go home.
Yeah.
Gosh dang, that's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Shawn, I appreciate your perspective so much, man.
That was
it's
awesome.
Like, it's just cool to chat with you. And even though, you know, your path diverged into so many different things, it's awesome to hear it. What do you have, anything for people kind of starting out on this career path? Any thoughts that they might like, what would they do different than you, or what would you do different given another go around, I guess?
Well, I would tell you that I wish I would have got my education sooner, but nowadays you see these guys coming in with fire degrees and stuff like that, so that's great. You know, paramedic school. Listen, not everybody needs to be a paramedic, okay? Straight up. Like, if you do not have a heart for it, if you're just looking to check a box and promote, you can go from EMT to captain or engineer. There's a pathway to that. You don't necessarily have to hit the paramedic. And honestly, I really do think that, you know, and I think that you guys do a pretty good job of identifying who those paramedics, those potential paramedics are. So I think that's really important. You got to have a support system.
Yeah.
2 of them. 2. And one thing I haven't talked a lot about is, you know, again, jiu-jitsu. One of the things that I got introduced in 2013 by my best friend in LA. He took me to a jiu-jitsu class, and he was introduced to it by David Lee Roth from Van Halen. Nice. And that's a whole other story. But my roots are David Lee Roth, my best friend, to jiu-jitsu, and which is a crazy story. But you know, there's a community in there. There's, you know, physical engagement. There's sweat equity. There's lots of things. There's vulnerability. There's, you know, lots of things with your ego checking out the door. But the biggest thing that I found is the community. I didn't, you know, I realized it wasn't just a bunch of people trying to break my arms and choke me and do all that. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times where they will. But, you know, what I really enjoyed going in is just I knew I was going to go see someone who was going to make me smile. Yeah. I knew someone was going to put me through a workout that was that was difficult, and I was just going to all of that ink, because that's the other thing too. A lot of people think it's adrenaline. Yeah. It's not. It's anxiety. Right? So be able to identify the difference between anxiety and adrenaline. Like, oh, I'm so pumped up from being a soldier and this, I got so much adrenaline running through me. No, you don't.
So we're talking adrenaline versus anxiety and feeling that out. And I think that's been something for me too. I'm drawn to these, you know, I ski and mountain bike on my time off, you know, which is this mixture of, I like to say, like, I get endorphins and the dopamine release of being, scared a little bit because I'm going fast down a technical thing. How do you differentiate that? What's that feeling like? What's that been, and what's that learning been like for you?
So first of all, it's a theory, right?
Okay.
For me, it's not, I don't know 100%, but I know for me, 20 years later out of the military, 10 years out of fire service, you know, I'm still dealing with stuff. I started realizing that, again, a lot of this came through jiu-jitsu. A lot of things that actually come through jiu-jitsu for me. I would be in a very, very, very bad mood. Cranky for no reason, just snippy short. And then I realized, and then I'd go work out, or I'd go to a jiu-jitsu class, or I'd go and I'd just sweat equity, right? And I'd be done, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like, I just felt like a new person. And then that kept happening, and I'm like, oh, I just need to work out because, you know, I got all of this adrenaline. And then I'm like, no, that's not what that is. That's anxiety. I have anxiety that's just billowing up inside of me, and I'm actually going to lose my mind here soon. And then I go to a class and done. Or I go on a run. Well, run. It's more of a saunter, kind of like a Clydesdale trot. That's my run, you know. Once I realized that physical outburst, that that sweat equity that I was getting rid of was actually releasing the anxiety out. I kind of noticed when I was on Xanax for a very short time, but I needed it at the time, but it made me almost feel a little bit like that. Like I just was euphoric and a little bit loosey-goosey and in a good mood, and just kind of everything was going to be all right.
So you could approach the challenges because you didn't get anything ticked off your list of to-dos while you're at jiu-jitsu. It's still all waiting for you, but you could approach it in a different way.
I could. Yeah, and I, again, this is not 100%, I'm shooting from a hip here a little bit, but these are things that work for me.
Yeah.
And that list is still there.
Yeah.
So I get to it when I can. There's some days I literally can knock out the whole list, and there's some days I just look at it.
Yeah.
But no, that I really do feel like that a lot of the things that, especially when you're younger, you're telling yourself that this is adrenaline, and that I'm just fired up. A lot of times it's anxiety.
Fired up to do everything.
Everything. And again, that's the distractions, that's the certain activities, that's the third or fourth business you're running. Like that's, you're just as busy outside of work as you are inside of work. That's maybe something to consider, pick one, or find a really good outlet to keep up your, because that's the other thing too. You still, especially in this job, you got to pull me out of a fire. I'm a hot 270 right now. And sometimes, Daddy drinks a little bit of beer, and during the summertime the barbecue hits. Sometimes I creep up towards 3. So you got to pull this out. You know what I mean? And if you can't, then you need to reevaluate what's going on. Yeah. Make sure that you have enough people on the call, which is nice because now we have enough help.
Now we have enough help. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, taxpayers.
Yeah, appreciate you so much.
No, you're right. I mean, I'm a 45-year-old, got to be a professional athlete still.
Absolutely. It's seriously 100%. And it's at 3 o'clock in the morning when you haven't had any sleep and maybe you didn't eat very well. I mean, again, and how long have you been doing this?
Yeah.
We talked about gray hair.
Yeah, got a few.
Well, I'm Santa Claus, and I used to have. I loved it when I had that. I had a little bit. Right, you're in the Clooney phase, by the way. But those are, again, a lot of that. Again, all joking aside, a lot of it's because you're internalizing and chewing on all of those things, and you don't even know that you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Just given those indicators, and I think if we can listen to our bodies a little bit to know, can I relax? Maybe I'm so busy that I don't even know if I can relax. If I'm given the opportunity, can I chill? And if not, how do I get there? And there's a lot of different ways, therapists, journaling, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, journaling. There's
working out, but hopefully that's part of a robust thing. But you're talking about a little bit of a barometer,
totally.
My barometer, I was off the off the charts and knew something needed to
read
to
fiction.
Change.
Do something that's not not always a self-help or a Jocko book or something, or a Rogan podcast. Take the time to have a hobby that's just not something that has a timeline or a deadline or a deliverable. It doesn't have to be a deliverable. Just enjoy something that you can let the mind rest a little bit, or maybe you can work through. Maybe you're working on a call and you're painting and doing. Again, I know it sounds a little bit. I know, right? I know, but I've gotten to be some of that, and I wish I had some of that back then. I wish some of this stuff. It's okay to do some of these things. It's okay to just let it mellow out a little bit. So
let's mellow out.
Let's just mellow out a little bit. Calm down.
No deliverable. We're 20 minutes in. We got nowhere to be.
Exactly. There were a lot of times where I would go cry somewhere, right? Or I would call my best friend, or I had some other people, but gosh dang it, I had a built-in freaking rock star who wanted nothing but to.
Yeah, just to love you. Yeah.
So, I think that's super important.
Yeah.
Let them love. Sorry. I'm not a good talker crier. I'm just a crier. And it just comes in. It just punches me in the gut. I don't really know when it's coming, but those are the types of things I think you got to let them love you. And a lot of times, even though you're like, I don't need all that. Yes, you do. And I think giving the spouses, the significant others, the tools to engage in that, I think would be huge. You know, again, just another nugget on top of the things you guys are already doing.
For sure.
Which, tip of the cap. Great job.
Sure. Appreciate you, buddy.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on Going Interior. I hope the ideas shared here help you adapt to the challenges of your life and career. Please share and like this episode if you find it useful. It has been produced by Dirk Klingman and Ellis Thompson, with additional editing by Matt Schofield and contributions by Lainey Osborne and Stephanie Houston. This work is sponsored by the Grand Junction Fire Department and the GJFD Peer Support Team. Special thanks to 970 West Studio for sharing their space, equipment, and expertise. Take care and please join us next time.